Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the West Newbury Conservation Commission is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. Reminder that people who would like to listen to or view this meeting while in progress may do so by use of Zoom. Link to meeting found on West Newbury Conservation webpage on the February 22nd, 2021 agenda, or by calling in at 1-646-558-8656, passcode 895262, meeting ID 816-6415-6285. Okay. We've had a number of hearings that have been continued. The Artichoke River Bridge, Pentucket, City of Newburyport, Lower Artichoke Spillway, and the West Newbury DPW townwide hazard tree management, as well as 519 Main Street. So we'll now open up a public hearing on a notice of intent filed by Gorman Homes LLC for Middle Street Assessors Map 22, Lot 2, Builders Lot A, for the construction of a driveway, wetland fill, and replication. Is there someone here to speak to that?
Hi, yes, my name is Matt Steinell. I'm from Millennium Engineering. I'm here tonight with the applicant, John Gorman.
Okay. Would you
I
like
can go right into it.
to explain your proposal and why it qualifies as a limited project?
Sure. So the project before you tonight for Lot A, the first one on the agenda, it qualifies as a limited project in part because of the local regulations that require the frontage to come off of the road, for the driveway to come off of the frontage for which it sits on the road, which is Middle Street. That one there has wetland, as we see here on this delineation. Bert, I'm assuming that this is your screen we're looking at?
Yep.
Okay, so as Bert has here on the screen, you can see there's a large bordering vegetated wetland that was delineated by West Environmental, and it comes all the way down and completely blocks off access to the lot from its frontage here on Middle Street. What the intent here is tonight is to present this to the commission to show that we are accessing off of Middle Street, coming up to the home up on the hill here, in which there is no other frontage or access off of another right-of-way. Therefore, the only access to the upland portion is through the wetland, which qualifies it as a limited project. This is for a
minute, since
I'm sorry.
I said, can I stop you there for a minute?
Sure.
Because it seems to me that the regulations say that you have to show there's no reasonable alternative means of access, and it may include previously or currently available alternatives such as realignment or reconfiguration of the project, and can require the applicant to utilize access over an adjacent parcel of land currently or formerly owned by the applicant, or in which the applicant has or can obtain an ownership interest. So my question is, why can you not come in through Archelaus? Because you also, Lot B.
Yeah, so again, Lot B is also being filed in a similar fashion because both frontages are off of Middle Street. The frontage that's available on Archelaus Hill is not of sufficient length or size to meet the zoning. So for that reason, we have to come off of Middle.
Have you requested a variance from the planning board?
No, so we're in the process of trying to present to the board and explain that what we're doing is presenting the plan for the Lot A, for the single family home up on the hill. Lot B, which is an alternative lot, has frontage on Middle Street as well, and we'll present that next. But the intent here is to show that we could access the lots that way, and therefore go to the planning board to request that waiver, so that way we can then access for that lot off of Archelaus Hill. So that's actually the intent for Lot B. Lot A doesn't have that option because, again, if Bert, if you could scan to the left of the plan. you'll see here that at the rear of the lot, there is a large bordering vegetated wetland there that prevents us from accessing Archelius Hill without crossing through that wetland as well. So we don't have access off the frontage of Middle Street, and we don't have access to the remainder of the lot because of the the bordering vegetated wetland at the rear of the development as well. Does that answer your question about why we're not coming off of Archelius?
Yeah, well, which wetland area, which wetland crossing would be more intrusive?
The one at the rear of the property for sure. It's a much larger wetland, much larger crossing. In the case of the one here on Middle Street, we're only actually proposing to impact about, can't see with the zoom in, I think it's about 670 square feet there, with a replication of 2:1 to put it back at 1340 as part of the restoration process or the mitigation process. Up here, we have a much longer crossing that would be necessary and would result in significantly more impact to the resource area.
Okay.
If there are specific questions as it relates to the delineation, I believe Mark West from West Environmental, our wetlands consultant, is also on the line, but that was the reason why we identified this here as a limited project. There's just no way to access that upland portion without having some impacts.
Well, I mean, that should be submitted in writing, you know, the reasons why you think it's a limited project. And also, it's hard to have any questions about the delineation when we've gotten no information about how it was delineated. So.
Rudy, do we have when it was delineated?
It's delineated in
It is identified.
Huh?
Yep, it is. The date's identified on the plan.
I'm the wetland scientist, and I believe I can answer any questions, but basically I was flagging at a very good time of year to look for hydrology. You can see the wetland system along Middle Street has these little fingers and their discharge. So on the slope, there's groundwater discharge. The whole system, wetland B, flows under Middle Street into a larger complex across the street. The wetland up on the hill is more of a gentle slope and has a restrictive layer in it, but again has some discharge. I was doing soil samples throughout the wetland system. I was using the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Acts and the Corps of Engineers new interim manual for the region, which has all sorts of details on soil criteria and plant community criteria. And if there's additional information needed, I can provide it, but I don't typically do data plots until I know exactly what the client is proposing. And I do have, I can get you plant community and soils information if needed.
Well, that would be helpful. I mean, we're also going to have to do a site walk when we can see what's out there.
Yeah, I'd be happy to join you on the site walk, and we can auger the soils. We can analyze the plant community. You can see that little finger on the slope going up. That wetland up on top of the hill drains in a different direction, not towards Middle Road, but it does extend onto the abutters property, and that system does some infiltration, and then there's groundwater breakout on the slope in the wetland system. And it's both of these are forested wetland systems.
Okay, well, thank you. I mean, it's usually helpful to have, again, some descriptive analysis so that we can ask questions.
Well, I will prepare something for you and also be there on the site walk.
Thank you. I don't know whether we can schedule it right now since the weather seems to be a little iffy.
Well, I heard it's going to go up to 50 a couple times in the coming weeks, so maybe there's hope.
I mean, we can try looking at Sunday before the next meeting.
So the next meeting is actually a week from today. We're scheduling it out.
When is the next meeting, Bert?
Next week.
Yeah, it's a week from today.
A week from today. No, that's not gonna, that might not work.
Isn't the ground frozen?
Yes.
Put on questioning whether we're going to be able to do anything.
No, the ground isn't frozen in these type of systems, but if you have more than 6 inches of snow cover, it's difficult, and it's better to have a little less snow if all of you are going to be looking at the boundary. But the ground in most of these systems is not frozen. I was augering soils today up in the southern White Mountains, so there's enough snow cover, and these type of soils with the breakout, the groundwater discharge, there shouldn't be a problem, but I can verify that. But a week seems like a pretty tight window, so I don't know if the meeting after next meeting is a little better if we're going to try to review the wetland boundary.
Yeah, I think that would be a more likely,
When is Bert?
meeting would be.
That's March 15th.
Okay. Why don't we tentatively schedule it for then? And if we get more snow, we can cancel it, and hopefully we don't and the snow melts.
And schedule a sidewalk for the 14th.
Yeah.
Is that agreeable?
Anybody, Judy, you're available?
Yeah.
How about you, Molly? Or is that too far?
No, I should be good. I'll put it in my phone.
Thank you.
8 a.m.
No. Well, don't forget we're turning the clocks ahead. Isn't it that weekend?
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
That's Sunday.
Also, 8, it'll be like 9, right?
Oh, geez.
Will it, or will it be like 7?
Like 7, yeah. How about 8:30?
All right.
I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Does that work for you?
Mark, does that work for you?
You're saying March 14th?
Yes,
I'll put it in what day of the week is that?
Sunday.
Sunday.
Sunday. Wow, that's
It-
special.
Oh, yeah, not for us, but it would be the day before the next meeting.
Okay, so I'll put it on my schedule. And if I guess we're going to be talking about the other site, so I can talk about those wetlands because I actually have another Zoom meeting to go to. Lucky me.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
All right, so why do we start the next one?
Agreement to continue this hearing until March 15th with the sidewalk on the 14th at 8:30? Is
Yes.
that okay with,
Is that okay with the applicant?
Yes, that's fine.
okay,
Thank
all right.
Before, if I may, before we vote, can I ask if the commission has any other questions about the other portions of the application? The plan that was before you also had some septic components and things like that, that I just want to make sure we weren't just focusing on the driveway. If there was any other questions I could answer.
Would it be possible for us to get full-size plans?
Yeah.
It's hard to,
We have full-size
Absolutely.
plans here, Wendy.
okay, can you leave them in the lobby then? And I'll pick one. I haven't had a chance to look at a full-size plan yet, so.
No,
Okay.
I with Wendy, this is really hard to look at like this.
Sure. I guess specifically what I wanted to point out is that, we have the leach field towards the back of the property here. There'll be some directional boring for the force main that will be going up and feeding that leach field. A single family home with a septic tank and a pump chamber out here. and driveway with the grading requirements and the tree clearing. That it's just more than just the wetland crossing at the front and the question of whether it was limited. I want to make sure we covered the whole project description and I addressed any questions that the commission had.
Oh, and you've got a force main going through the wetlands for this.
Correct.
There we go.
How are you proposing to get equipment to across the wetland to the leach
So
field?
the owner of the property, lot B, you can see is down here. We have access on this side of the wetland from the other property. So they'll be coming in, they'll be cutting a hole here in the ground for their directional boring pit. And then they'll directionally drill the pipe under the wetland to the other side where there's another directional boring pit on that side. And they'll pick it up there. And then the rest of it will be trenched, normal trench excavation for the installation. But through the wetland, we don't want to impact the actual wetland itself. So this is set down below the wetland and directionally drilled.
What do you mean by directionally drilled?
So it's a piece of heavy equipment that they set inside this pit, this yellow 6x10 pit that they do here, and it actually underground without having any disturbances to the surface. It cores a hole through the earth and comes out on the other side in the pit over there, in which when they retract the drill, they can pull the pipe through underground without actually having to cut a trench. So there's no surface disturbance whatsoever.
Okay, but you may be going through the wetland underneath the surface.
Yes, we're crossing the wetland by going under the wetland.
Well, you may be going through the wetland. How deep is this, how deep is the pipe?
The minimum depth is 5 feet.
The minimum.
Correct. So as they're boring, and they're trying to do this in a straight shot, limit the bellies and stuff from the pipe, they could go deeper in some spots, but the minimum depth is 5 feet.
Have we had this done in West Newbury before?
I don't think
No.
so.
This way, no.
I know I had to Google it. I was like, what is directional drilling? But
It's done an awful lot in roadways when running utility lines in order to avoid digging up pavement and keep the cost for construction down. The cost for installing it with directional drilling in a paved situation gets very expensive for a traditional trench because you have to redo the pavement afterwards. By doing it this way here, you minimize disturbances on the surface, which protects any resource areas in and around the surrounding area. As a matter of fact, we're doing one on Pleasant Valley Road for a sewer extension right along the river in Amesbury. And so it's used quite a bit in utility installation, which is essentially what we're doing here. It's a force main for a sewer connection, but it's going to a leach field opposed to a sewer main.
Do you do any kind of borings to find out what kind of material you've got 5 feet down?
Well, we've done test pits throughout the area, significant test pits for the septic. So we've got test pits all throughout this area. It's shown on the septic plans, and we can provide the commission with that information as well. Some of these fields are rather large because the material is rather silty. So it's not real sandy material. It's got a real high amount of silt in it.
I mean,
Yeah, it's-
presumably you did not do your test pits in the wetlands.
No, we didn't do anything in the wetland.
Right, so I'm just wondering whether you know what the material 5 feet down in the wetland area that you're proposing to put your pipe through looks like, or whether you
right, because didn't the scientists say that there was a restrictive layer, and what is
Yeah.
that restrictive layer?
Yeah, like I was saying, this is Mark West. There's a very dense soil that's holding the water up in that wetland. And so if you're 5 feet underneath the surface of the wetland in that dense soil, and you have dense soil above you, you're not going to change the hydrology of that wetland. That wetland is being fed by discharge upslope, and then it's sitting there and slowly draining because it can't percolate down very well. So if you were up on the surface, you could change the hydrology, but 5 feet below in the dense soil with a barrier between you of dense soil, you're not going to affect the hydrology of the wetland significantly based on the fact that it's a discharge and a a perched system.
And the drilling could go through rock too, couldn't it? Is that?
Absolutely. So very frequently under existing roads, they encounter bedrock. It's more expensive. They use a different type of drill bit, more expensive to get through ledge, but they can actually bore right through ledge.
Okay, but right now you don't, you say there's a dense layer mark, but you do know how far down that goes.
Well, they have the test pits that they will give you in the vicinity. So they're not shown on this plan, but Matt can send and you can look at the ones that are closest to the wetland.
Okay, you know, if you can send that information over, that would be good.
Sure, absolutely.
And if people have more questions after they've had an opportunity to look at the full-scale plans, maybe you could have her email them to you and you could get us some answers before the sidewalk.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so we move on to lot B. Now open a public hearing for notices of intent, Foreman Homes LLC for Middle Street Assessors Map 22, Lot 2, Builders Lot B for the construction of a driveway, wetland fill, and replication.
So this particular lot B, is a similar development as the one you saw prior, except there is no crossing of a wetland for a full-length driveway. There is no crossing of a wetland for the service of the sewer to be installed. All of the work related to the house, the tree clearing, the septic system, the primary driveway that we're hoping to build is all greater than 100 feet from the wetland. As a matter of fact, you can see this here in the middle of the screen. There's a little square there, and that's the proposed reserve area, and that is just outside of 100 feet to the wetland. So the tree clearing is even further upslope than that. The reason we're here tonight is because, again, a local regulation requires that we access the property off of the frontage, and the lot is fronted on Middle Street. They do allow for the opportunity, once you prove that you can access the lot off the frontage, to apply for alternative access. So the intent here is first and foremost to show that we could build it, that we plan to build it, but to let the commission know that it is our intent to go to the planning board and apply for alternative access. If we're denied, then we have this plan that you see before you with the driveway coming up, a slight filling of wetlands here, and the wetland replication necessary to mitigate that at a 2-to-1 replication, and this would get us access to the property. Bert, if you could just slide to the left a little bit.
Where's the driveway?
Yeah. Oh, I
That's-
see. No,
So
wait a minute.
this would be a driveway for you to be able to pull in and park on the property. Obviously, if we're denied access off of the other property, we'd be coming back and likely modifying this, but this is just to prove that we could actually access the property off of Middle Street.
Well, but
Once
how
this is approved,
But-
and we have seen,
The driveway goes nowhere. It just goes into park.
we only need to show we can access the property. So yes, that's the
Okay.
purpose of this, is to show we could access the property. So once we've proven that it could be built, that we do have access to the property, then we go back to the planning board and we submit a plan similar to this to show that, yes, we could build it here. However, we don't want to do that. What we are then asking the commission, if you, again, scan to the left, Bert, all the way to the left, what we're then asking the planning board is, we've proven that we can access the property here. Don't make us build this. What we would rather do is do this over here for our alternative access. So you can see that what we plan to do with the planning board permission, once they've reviewed this and if they grant the approval, is the alternative access off Archelius Hill here. So we have a driveway coming in this way here that would access the garage on that end of the building, single family, 4-bedroom home here with the septic just down slope of the single family residence. Limiting our tree clearing to just the fill area that's needed to put the septic in and around the house and to get the driveway in. If the planning board approves the alternative access, then we would be back before you with a request for certificate of compliance for the driveway up front, indicating that it was never built and closing it out as an invalid. But we have to first prove that we could if we had to.
And how do you access the house from this dead end
Yeah.
driveway?
Well, to be honest with you, it's a different bar that we're trying to prove. At this point, we just need to prove we have access to the lot. If they had to, they could park cars there and they could walk all the way around to Archelaus Hill and come in that way there. We could come back before the commission. Obviously, that's not the preferred method of doing it. So if we were denied the alternative access, we would seek a change in this design here, potentially extending the driveway either up further or putting in some type of a pathway for them to be able to walk up and access. We'd have to explore that design option, where we would go with that. But for the purposes of the planning board application for alternative access, all we need to show is that we have access to the property, and this is sufficient to prove that we could have access to the property off of Middle.
Well, I mean, it seems to me that you're asking us to formalistically approve something so we can go back to the planning board and do something else. Because if this is in fact a proposal you want us to approve, it seems to me you ought to be able to show us how people are going to access the house from this driveway that is so far away from it without adversity.
I understand what you're saying, but for the purposes of this plan, I have demonstrated that. For the purposes of this plan, we're showing that they have parking on site, that they access off of Middle. And if they had to, they could get out, they could walk down Middle, come up Archelaus and get onto their property that way. So for the purposes of this plan, although we recognize that's not likely the way we would go with this, we would look at alternative accesses. We only need to prove that it could be done in order to get in front of the planning board and ask for something that is much more reasonable. The alternative access, as we suggest here, if I may finish, the alternative access that we suggest here off of Archelaus would also be beneficial to the wetland that is here, because we would be removing all proposed construction activities from the 100-foot buffer. So we need to show that we could do it, and then we need to be able to go to the planning board and say, if we had to, we could do this. However, we would like you to give us the alternative access.
Yes, but how does this proposal meet the limited project requirements that you show you have no alternative access? If you can come in off of Archelaus Hill.
For the same reason that we're required by local bylaw, by local regulations, to access the lot off the frontage. This is Middle Street. We don't have any other way. And even if this wasn't a limited project, it would still be a permittable project under the Act.
What is your frontage on Archelaus?
I'm sorry, one more time?
How many feet is your frontage on Archelaus?
This is the applicant, it's 153.
And the requirement's 200?
Yeah. I mean, typically when there are planning board issues, applicants go to the planning board first and get a firm plan before they come to the Concom. It seems like this is kind of a backwards way to do it.
Agreed, but that's the local bylaw. The bylaw requires that we have to prove that we have access first. And we have the frontage, we have the area, we have all the requirements for Form A subdivision, or I'm sorry, an A&R subdivision. So we have everything we need, except we have to prove access. And this would be a permittable project under the Act, because we are filling and replicating, at a ratio of 2 to 1. And it meets the standards. And so we can prove that we can meet the standards for the performance standards under the Wetlands Protection Act for bordering vegetated wetland. We're impacting far less than the 5,000 square foot that the Act says that we can do through approval through the commission. This is far smaller than that. So we believe this is a permittable activity. And if we had to do it, we could. This would be something that would meet the standard for access. And that's all we have to prove. And then once we get to the planning board, that's when we're looking for alternative access to, minimize the impacts to the wetlands. This is a way for us to avoid having to do that.
Well, I suggest we continue this to the same March 15th and do the sidewalk for this on the 14th as well. And I still am not convinced that, given the alternative access on Arcus, that it meets the wetlands protection regulations for a limited project.
Well, we can go back and look at that. We do, like you said, you want to do a site visit anyway, so there's time to do
Yes.
that. We could revise the application. We could revise the application to remove the limited access element of this. And I still believe that it can be permitted under the regulation, under the
Well, I
act,
mean, the question is, I mean,
even
if
as a non-limited.
our general rule of thumb is that if you don't need to disturb the wetlands, then you don't. And you do have alternative access and could ask the planning board for variance.
I don't believe that's the case. I don't believe we have alternative access. Their regulation requires access off of the frontage, the 200-foot frontage that's necessary to meet the requirement. This lot is listed with its frontage on Middle Street, so their regulation requires the access to come off of here. They only offer the option of the alternative access route after you've proven you have a viable lot that has access.
When are you going before the planning board, or do you wait till after you're through with us?
We need to get through you first so we can go to the planning board and present the approval and say, here it is. We have our lot with our frontage and we have viable access through the Conservation Commission with the permitting of this driveway. Now that we have our access and we have our lot with our frontage, we're now applying for the alternative access, which would eliminate the need to do this up front here. But we just have to prove that we have that access first. It's
I
different
think we
because it's not
need-
a variance.
Yeah, I think we need to get an opinion from the planning board on this. Bert, can you talk to Leah about this and see if this makes sense, how this is being proposed? It feels like you're pitting the two boards against each other, and I want to stay completely away from that.
Yeah, I can talk to you about it.
Okay. The other thing that I noticed in the notice of intent for the natural heritage map, you used one from 2017. I believe there's a newer one. Is that right, Bert?
Well, the one off the natural,
I think there was one last year, an update.
Okay. I usually check it on Oliver, so I'd imagine they have the updated.
Okay.
no, we get it off of Oliver as well, and it identifies it as being imagery from August of 2017.
Okay. Are you familiar with the
legend, that's where I
Biomap
get the
2
from.
habitat? This is right in a core habitat for wetlands on the Biomap 2 that's also on the GIS layer.
I don't know if I saw that.
If you could just take a look at that, it's in a pretty extensive wetland core habitat area.
Biomap 2. Yeah, I'll take a look there. We look,
Okay.
like I said, there's two maps on the natural heritage there. The biomap is something outside of natural heritage. That's through DEP.
It's a two other groups. It's not the DEP, but they frequently use the map when they're evaluating projects.
Any other questions for now? So with the consent of the applicant, we will continue the hearing on this notice to the 15th and conduct the site walk on the 14th at 8:30, along with the site walk for Lot A.
That's fine with us.
Okay, thank you. So. And
What's
again,
next?
if we have questions, we will use Bert before the meeting. Next on the agenda is the discussion item, the Artichoke River conservation restrictions. Vanessa? Still here?
Vanessa?
I am here, hang on. Hi, everybody, just getting the
Hi.
camera back up. Sorry, I have multiple, I'm double tasking and I have multiple mirrors, windows up. Hang on 1 second.
It's kind of hard to hear you, Vanessa.
Sorry, I was also
There you
eating
go.
dinner, so my microphone was down. And for some reason, I can't see anybody, but
We don't see you either, but we hear
there we
you.
go. Nope, here we go. Sorry about that. Apologies, here I am.
All right.
So this is one of the most complicated conservation restrictions I've ever worked on. This is the Artichoke River Woods Conservation Restriction. West Newbury at last Springtown meeting approved $175,000 in CPA funds to co-acquire the conservation restriction on the 38-acre Artichoke River Woods property, which is adjacent to the reservoir. The other entities that are acquiring the conservation restriction are the Department of Conservation and Recreation, which is also acquiring the CR for $175,000, and the City of Newburyport, which is acquiring the conservation restriction for $525,000. It's a little bit of an unusual conservation restriction because the City of Newburyport is getting a drinking water supply grant, which is administered by the DEP. So there's additional language in here that was required by the DEP that designates the City of Newburyport as sort of the primary grantee with primary approval authority for activities that have the potential to impact the water supply. The end result of this project is that Greenbelt will own the restricted fee, and we plan to operate and manage the property as a public open space for passive recreational uses with a trail system that we hope will eventually connect to the property to the north. That's the Society of St. John the Evangelist, on which the town has a drinking water easement for the water wells. So having a trail connection there would be lovely. And of course, just to the south of Middle Street, there's the town's Withers Conservation Area. So it's a nice expansion of that trail system too. So it's a great project. It's taken a lot to pull it together, and we're at the end. This conservation restriction has been approved by the DEP, by the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, by DCR's legal counsel. It is about to go before Newburyport City Council. It has been before the Newburyport Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners, which is the entity, the care and control entity that will be holding the CR for the city. So we're at the end stage, and if the commission is amenable, would love to entertain a motion from you all tonight to approve the CR and approve it for signing.
So Vanessa, other than the number of players, what makes this so complicated? Or is it only the number of players involved?
Oh, it's only the number of players
Okay,
involved.
okay. So there's nothing unusual in terms of the language or anything?
Well, what's a little bit unusual is that well, it's nothing terribly unusual, but the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners has a sort of unilateral authority to whenever there's any activity, any reserved right that needs approval authority, the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners gets at first stab at saying whether or not those potential activities have the potential to adversely impact the water supply. If they do have the potential to adversely impact the water supply, then it is the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners that determines whether those activities are permitted or not. without say from the other grantees. But if the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners says, no, this activity likely doesn't have any potential to impact the water supply, which we think is 90% of everything that's going to happen on the property, it's going to be managed for passive public recreational uses, then the decision is made by all three grantees equally.
And there's that provision that says that water and sewer gets the decision-making on if it's not arbitrary or capricious.
That's right. They can't, the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners can't be arbitrary and capricious in their decision-making.
And we have not yet determined how that
Who
would be.
determines that? That's right.
But I mean, I think it's, I move that we accept the conservation restriction and easements and sign off on it.
Sign, second.
Any further discussion? I just want to say thanks to Vanessa and Greenbelt for putting in all the time and effort to get this project done. I think it certainly got a big bang for our buck, and appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It was definitely a team effort. We never do these things alone. So the town was a huge part, and the Open Space Committee in particular played a huge role in helping to move this along and get it through town meeting and all of that. So it's really the residents of West Newbury that we also thank. How is the Conservation Commission doing in-person signatures?
Yeah, so why don't we take it? We'll take a vote.
I'm sorry?
I said, take a vote.
Yeah, first we'll vote to make sure we're signing.
Apologies.
Vaughn?
Aye.
Oh, wait a minute. Who-
Sorry about that, Judy. I couldn't hear you with the mask, so, but aye for me.
Wendy?
Aye.
Molly?
Aye.
Okay, so, yeah, we are signing things in person. And Bert generally is leaving the documents in the hallway that people can access.
Do you need a notarized signature, Vanessa?
One of the signatures needs to be notarized.
Okay.
They don't all have to be, but
Okay.
one should be. Ideally, the chair. I am a notary, so I could meet you in the parking lot. That's helpful.
I actually had, the last thing we had notarized, I went in and Mike did it too, so you wouldn't have.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect. So someone can just let me know when it's all fully signed and I can come pick it up.
What's your time frame on this?
I mean, sometime in the next week or so would be great. You know, by
Okay.
sometime next week would be perfect.
All right.
Okay.
I'll put the signature page down there today. Do you just need one copy, Vanessa, or do you need multiple copies of?
One copy,
Okay.
one original.
I will sign tonight.
and Bert, you'll tell Mike that I have to come in to get that notarized?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Have a good night.
You too.
Next item is the fiscal year 22 budget.
So, Angus asking about voting on the budget for FY22, if there's any proposed changes. I don't know if there is or not. He said specifically if there's going to be proposed changes on wage rate, hours, or budgeted Concom expense lines. I don't know that we have any proposed changes.
What's the, does Bert's wage, does it go up? Does he get a percentage of an increase? How does that work?
We don't know. We just have to submit it without, and then if they decide to do a COLA increase, they'll add it.
Okay.
Could we take a look? I mean,
Yeah, let me pull the, yeah.
And then we have to vote on using our money to pay for him to do the trail work, correct?
Yeah, I can update you on that, but that's separate from the budget. Yeah.
Okay.
So how have the expenses been, Bert, with the vehicle allowance and
That's pretty
everything?
accurate. Yep,
Okay, so you think that's adequate, that amount?
yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. And so is that where the cost for the invasive certification program will come out of, or?
That
I'm
came the regular Concom budget. So Concom expenses here.
Can you make that bigger? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble reading the numbers. Thank you.
I'm glad it's not just me.
I could put my glasses on, but what's the fun in that?
Do we have somebody who's certified to be a pesticide applicator?
No. Yeah, there's nobody on DPW, right, Bert? I know that's something they've discussed, but.
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we're going to do any kind of invasive management, we should really try to get somebody to do the training. I've been certified in the past. It's like a day or two of training and then a test. It's not too bad.
Yeah. Maybe that's something to keep an eye on, Bert, if you come across any training or, once you finish with the UMass extension.
UMass class is definitely pretty geared towards that herbicide application. I know it's a continuing ed credit. That's what most people are in there for their applicator license. I don't know how it works out for obtaining a license, but I can definitely find out.
Okay.
Okay.
What is the cost of a
I would have to look.
certification program? Maybe we need to increase the.
I think isn't it $400, Bert? I think it's 90 something per.
We're talking about getting someone certified to do applications.
Oh, no, I was talking about the UMass extension program that that we voted to have him participate in.
Right, but I'm wondering about whether if we're going to look to get someone certified for applications, we maybe want to increase the expense budget. And I have no idea how much that costs.
Well, if it's an 8-hour training, it's probably maybe $150. I mean, is there an exam involved, Marley?
Yeah.
So it's probably another 100.
I mean, you can do the exam without the training. If you're good at book learning and want to do that. So I don't know. I think I can Google it right now and see if I can get
I
it.
just looked it up. So it said, just quickly, it said the actual certification fee is only $100.
Oh,
So I don't know I'd have to look a little closer into the courses, but I'm pretty sure if you have your applicator's license, you also have to carry liability insurance with it. So that would probably be a continuing cost with it. Not sure what that costs, but I'm almost positive you need to carry some sort of insurance.
Yeah. Well, so we should look into that further, I guess. It seems like the town would be carrying that, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, since we're meeting again next week, maybe you could find out what the cost is and what whether the town's liability insurance would cover.
Yeah.
That was not.
I think they're looking for the budget right away. Most other departments have already approved their budget.
Yeah, I think you really wanted to vote tonight on it.
Did he say why he didn't put this before us, Bert?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay.
I just got this just before the meeting.
Yeah.
I have a really dumb question, guys. Where's the actual FY 2022 numbers? So they're showing, 2018, 19, 20, 21 final budget, 21 amended budget, but the FY 2022 column isn't showing any number. So I'm wondering, what does want us to vote on?
Well, they've
Yeah,
got to
I
propose
have to fill something in and then send, I have another sheet to fill in and then send back to them if there's any proposed changes.
Then to make this simple, this is what I would recommend, unless there's huge variance in any of these line items, that I think the selectmen were looking to increase items by 1.5%. I think that was at one of their last meetings, that's their goal, that we would request for the, FY 2022 for each of these 4 line items to increase by 1.5%.
I thought that the overall town budget was limited to 1.5%, so that some departments would have no increase and some might have a little more. I wasn't under the impression that each department could put in a 1.5% increase. I think we'll have to justify whatever we propose, so.
So it says here on the budget policy direction from the selectmen, first line, we propose a FY22 operating budget that will limit the overall increase in the expense budget to no more than 1.5%.
no more than.
Yeah, I can bring that up. You can read the whole thing.
I can't. Can you move? Wait a minute, I can't read. There we go.
Well, so I think the current budget is adequate, right, Bert? I mean, you feel like the expenses, there's enough that's budgeted
Yeah.
other than this possible applicator
Yeah.
license? Okay. I just want to make sure.
I did a quick check and the reading materials cost about $87 and then the training was $170 through UMass.
Mhm.
So it wouldn't be more than
Like $300 for,
300.
yeah. So maybe we could just add $300 to the expense. Is that where the training comes out of, the expense line?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's add that. And then Bert, if you can just confirm with Angus or whoever about the insurance.
Okay.
So do
I
we
would-
want to vote
I
on
would,
this?
yeah, I would move that we increase the expense line item by $300 to accommodate pesticide application certification.
Second,
Any further discussion? Wendy?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
John?
aye.
Molly?
I
Aye. Next discussion item is the land agent position update.
So I just, after our meeting last time, I had sent Angus a request to use the Wetlands Revolving Fund money to pay for 3 of Bert's hours spent on administrative work. Even though the regulations give the town manager full authority on approving that, he wanted me to go before the Board of Selectmen. Mike McCarron seemed to think that they had to approve any increase in hours of town staff. So I just did that. And there was a lot of discussion from one selectman in particular. But the overall impact was that they approved it. So the only thing is we will have to, on Bert's timesheet, there'll have to be a separate line item for the 3 hours a week that's going to come from the Wetland Revolving Fund account. So I'm sure Stephanie or whoever will help you set that up, Bert.
Wendy, what was the objection?
It felt to me like it was just, not really being on board with the whole land agent thing.
Okay.
And they only approved 2 hours, and they felt like this was a backdoor to get around. It was just one selectman, and felt like we would be better off asking for that increase in our budget rather than using this fund of $90,000 that can't be spent on anything else. When I thought it was like a good thing that the commission was trying to do. So he pretty much got beaten down by everybody else. So
I'll have to watch that.
well, I guess the concern was, I think in the past, perhaps grants have been received that were used to fund an additional position. And then I think the town felt like they got locked into continuing that when the grant went away. So then they had to expend town money. But this this is not like that, though. I mean, the 3 hours of Bert's time a week will be probably $5,000 a year. And that's less than half of the average income we get in fees to the revolving fund. So
I think they were talking about the motorcycle from back in like 2005, and they put an extra cop on, and they had to get a motorcycle license.
Probably,
that came with that.
We heard that discussion.
Yeah.
That, then they have to replace it when it dies or whatever.
Yeah, I think you're right. So the only thing in the motion was that we'll do this. It will sunset in June of 2022, which is a year and a half. And then we'll evaluate and see if that's an appropriate amount of time, or whether we want to increase it, or whether Bert still wants to work, weekends to do this. Possibly at that point, we might consider having an administrative assistant help him. But so I think a year and a half is a good amount of time to try to work the kinks out of this.
Okay.
And I met with the Open Space Committee last week. Bert had written up a summary of the work that he's done, and we discussed that. And two of the things that Bert said that he thought could make this more effective was, one, that he has his own tools to use. So the Open Space Committee voted to pay for him to buy some tools. And then also that there's a formal trail work request system for the public to engage him directly to say, hey, there's a trail down at Withers or whatever. So the Open Space Committee is going to work on putting something on their website. And I think we should also have a link on the Concom website for people to, to contact Bert if they see trail work that needs to be done. So that's my update.
Sounds good.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Stormwater bylaw.
So I had an update on that. The stormwater group met last week. I wasn't able to go to it because I was on my way to Hamilton. But basically, my understanding what came out of that meeting is that not feeling ready to bring a stormwater bylaw to the Springtown meeting. So it's going to be pushed off to the fall. There's a couple questions that they're looking for input from the Conservation Commission. Let me see if I can just.
Is there a draft of this bylaw yet?
There is a draft for the bylaw, but I think it's gonna be. It's one way or the other. So just a couple things to think about. I don't think we need really answers right now. But some of the questions that came out of it would be, what entity will be the permit granting authority? Whether it's a board or commission or a department staff person. Which entity will be the enforcement authority? So right now they're looking at, it could be inspectional services, but then there's the thought that it'd be a better fit for conservation since there's already an enforcement role for projects with the Conservation Commission. There was one other question.
I think that another question is whether it's just going to be the MS4 area or it would apply to the whole town.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah. So this came up at the planning board. Leah was the one that drafted the bylaw, and the discussion about who was going to be the person in charge of this came up, and I've got the sense that they felt like Conservation Commission should be in charge of it. So I mean, I think that makes sense, but I'm just concerned about Bert adding, this additional responsibility. So I think they were going to try to figure out how many permits a year this would actually involve. I think it's projects greater than an acre is what they're looking at currently. Is that right, Bert?
Yeah, and I've been in touch with Leah about that recently today, and it's not a ton.
Okay.
That could definitely change in the future. Who knows? But
And most of those probably have wetlands on site, so you would be involved anyway, right?
exactly.
That's why it seemed like it would be a good fit for the Conservation Commission to take on, but.
Well, I guess I would like to see what the bylaw is saying before opining on any kind of question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the bylaw is required by the permit, but it seems like we should definitely have input on the language in the bylaw.
Yeah, and they're definitely looking for input from the Concom on it.
But the maybe where you could circulate the current draft so we can see what we're talking about. Okay, next is the Wetlands Protection Bylaw. I sent Angus a warrant article request with the draft bylaw attached and a rationale that was a shortened version of our executive summary. And he seemed to think that that was adequate. While I was going over it, I have, I think, a few more suggestions for revising the executive summary, and I will get that to Bert tomorrow to circulate.
I think it may actually work out better for us that the stormwater bylaw and the flood protection bylaw are being delayed until the fall, because having 3 bylaws in one town meeting, I think, could have been problematic. So I'm glad that we're ready to move ahead. I think that this is a good time to do it.
Yeah.
So what's the next step, Judy? Are we all set, or do we need to submit more paperwork?
No, I don't think we need to submit any more. Angus didn't want any more paperwork.
Okay.
Does he want us to have an open meeting, or?
I think we should. I mean, he didn't say.
Yeah.
I will send Bert what I sent Angus, and he can send that around. I forgot to do that today.
So should we schedule a public hearing?
I think so.
I think it'd be good to do it soon instead of waiting until the end of April, like right before. I mean, especially if there's good input from the public.
So when do you think we'd want to?
I mean, ideally in March, I don't know.
Meeting March 1st, and then March 15th, and then the following meeting after that wouldn't be till April 5th.
Yeah.
We might need a meeting in between there just because the selectmen and the finance committee has to, they both have to review everything and vote, and you want to give them time to do that as well.
So what if we had the public hearing on March 15th? That way we could get any input and make any revisions that need to be made. Or Tom, are you suggesting that we do the public hearing after FinCom and Board of Selectmen review?
No, we have to do it before. I think we have to get the hearing, get the feedback, get our final adjustments made, get that to the selectmen probably by the 22nd, because I'm assuming the last meeting, the last week of March is when they do the votes, from what I remember, because they want everything basically tied up for the first week of April so they can start putting together the materials.
Okay. Are they definitely doing the first week of April for town meeting?
First week of May? I don't know. I haven't heard, but I'm assuming.
No, it's the end of May.
It's going to be the end of May? Okay.
Yeah.
So that gives them gives a little bit more room too, because you have the 14-day window, which would be then May 14th or May 10th. Then you back up from that date. But I'm assuming they're still going to vote at some point, by the first week of April.
It is May 22nd.
Yeah. So Bert, what is involved in you posting the public hearing? Do you have to do notifications? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it would really just be getting an ad in the newspaper and then having it as a public hearing on the agenda.
Okay. So,
And can you
So for-
notify different town boards?
yeah, I can do
Send
that.
around, you know, just so they'll know.
Yep. Yep.
and
So that's-
include the bylaw with it?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's for the 15th.
Yeah, I think that would be good if you can swing it. And can we put that first on the agenda, or do we have to have this Middle Street project first because it's already an open hearing? If there are people interested, it would be better to do this first thing. What do you think?
I'd rather do it first and get it over with.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you have a continued public hearing, if they come first on the agenda, or is that up to us?
That's up to us. We didn't,
Yeah.
Okay.
we didn't continue it to a certain time.
Can I ask a question that about the driveway, or is that not allowed until we've? Because, well, no, it just, to me, it was like they were skirting the regulations. I mean, who's going to buy a lot where you park down near the road and walk up the hill? I don't understand that. That's all. If we were in the
So,
wrong, I would have.
This reminds me of the duplexes that went up on
Mhm.
Main Street. What is it, 81 or 89 Main Street,
Yeah.
across from the Hawks? And we had a discussion about this. And it was Tom Hughes, and he said there is like a little sliver of upland between the road and the wetland. And because it was there, just the fact that it was there was enough proof that they had access to the property. And so it didn't matter if the driveway was in another place.
It just seemed like when you
He didn't
look
go
at
through
that,
the process of making this,
Yeah.
plan with a fake driveway that wasn't ever going to happen because it was so unrealistic.
yeah.
So I don't know.
No, I don't know either.
Yeah, there's some history with the planning board on this. So,
You'll let us know at a further
Yeah.
date.
yeah.
Okay. All
So I
right.
think it'd be good for Bert to check in with Leah, just because I don't want to be played, you know.
Well, I mean, I am not convinced that Lot B meets the requirements for a limited project, and the commission does not have to approve a wetlands crossing where there are alternative means of doing it. We're not enforcing zoning regulations.
I think I'm going to check with DEP on that. That's a good question for.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that'd be good.
All right. So what's next on our agenda? What?
Any other business?
Oh,
I did have one thing. Judy, this is a follow-up to the CPC meeting on the Mill Pond accessible trail.
Yeah.
The people that are working on that asked me if Bert could do the delineation for them. And I said that in the past, we've not done that. If the commission is, is going to be evaluating, having a notice of intent. So, but I said I'd bring it up for discussion.
I don't think that's appropriate.
Okay. So when would it be appropriate, if ever, just so I can respond?
I don't think it is appropriate for the conservation agent to be delineating a project that the commission is voting on, because the agent is reviewing it for us and not working for the applicant.
if
Even
we
if
were,
the applicant is a town
I
entity?
just don't think it's appropriate.
if we didn't have to take a vote on it, then I would say he could do it. But where it has to come back before us and we have to vote on it, I just think, wouldn't it be a conflict of interest?
But I mean, I think that, the conservation agent goes out and offers preliminary advice to applicants, but doesn't do a formal delineation. It's up to the applicant to hire someone to do that for them. Whoever
So
they
that,
are.
so that would be part of the project cost.
Yeah.
And typically we would waive the filing fee if it's a
Yeah.
town, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, just wanted to confirm, that was my impression, but,
Yeah.
okay.
And that's, I can't recall ever having the conservation agent do a formal delineation on a project that the commission is voting on.
Yeah, I suggested perhaps contacting like maybe Tracy Peters or somebody else in town that does delineation to see if they would, you know, do it on, you know, a donation basis for the group. So, is there anybody else that does delineation that you know of in town?
Newbury?
Yeah. Or, you know, even Newburyport. I mean, a lot of people use Mill Pond that aren't from West Newbury. Maybe Tom Hughes.
I didn't
That's a
lie.
good one.
Yeah,
All right. Thank you. That's it.
all right. Do we have minutes to vote on?
We had minutes from January 25th and February 8th. I confess, I have not had a chance to look at February 8th.
All right, let's try January.
But January 25th, Tom, I think you had not looked at them last time.
And I still haven't looked at them. I basically got pinged every day. I was on vacation, and today has been just, I've been dumped on, so my apologies.
All right, well, why don't we do that next week for sure? Both of them?
Yes, I will definitely get them read. My apologies.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay, that is it.
Oh, an early night.